Hey guys, it's Danny. Today it's not the 1st of October, but it's close enough. It is time to see what orchids we had in bloom for the month of September. Today we're not going to repeat orchids we've seen in previous months because, well, here on my channel we do a sort of popularity contest. Down below in the description you will find a link towards a straw poll where you can vote for your favorite orchid this month. And at the end of the year I will proclaim the orchid of the year on my channel and even do a giveaway, who knows. So you are invited to check the description and visit that link in order to vote for your favorite one. And to be fair, we cannot repeat again the orchids that we've seen last month or 2 months ago. By the way, just as a side note, I will be in the comments for the first hour after I publish this video, answering your orchid related questions to the best of my abilities. We started this last video, but I announced it at the end of the video, where pretty much everybody clicked off. So I think it's a better idea to announce it at the beginning. So 1 hour I will be available in the comment section to answer comments. So with that said, let's see what freshly opened orchids we had this month. September starts off with the Oncidium Alliance starting to bloom. It is their season, typically in the autumn. So here we have the first contestant. This is Miltonia Peter Komp, and isn't she a beauty? P.S. If on some of these orchids you will see a few ants, try not to panic, they're absolutely fine. Now this orchid almost died on me, I almost lost it. But through the power of magic and a repot, she is now completely vigorous, completely saved, and is blooming wonderfully. Now this orchid is supposed to be fragrant, and you will find it for sale as a fragrant orchid. You'll find growers who suggest it's fragrant. My particular individual, sadly, is not very fragrant. I can detect a very mild, kind of sweet fragrance, but it's supposed to be this wonderful magical fragrance. Mine does not have that fragrance. So there might be some individuals which are lacking the scent. But if you don't care about the scent, the flowers are absolutely stunning. I particularly enjoyed this very dotted wild pattern it has on the sepals and petals. The orchid herself is not a tiny orchid though. We have long leaves and quite large pseudobulbs and of course a large flower spike. So do consider finding an appropriate space for it because it's gonna take quite a bit off of your shelf. Next up, yet another Miltonia. This is called Sandy's Cove. It is the first time that I have it in bloom and the first bloom of the orchid, so it's a young orchid. Luckily though, the flowers look really good. The problem is I waited quite a lot until all of the buds opened, and this took about 3 weeks. So the first flower which opened is already starting to fade. Next time I film it, I will not wait that long. But anyway, back to the orchid. This Miltonia does not have a fragrance, nothing that I can detect, nothing that I can find on the internet stating it is fragrant, but the colors are absolutely wonderful. Yet again, we have a dotted pattern on the petals and sepals, and the lip is mainly one solid color, but I do enjoy the waterfall effect, and you can see it is different from the previous Miltonia we saw. This particular one is kind of a tiny plant. It is a young plant. This is the first pseudobulb that blooms. It might grow a little bit more, but I don't suspect it will have such big pseudobulbs as the Peter Komp. It does look like it's a totally different thing. We can see the leaves are not as long, so definitely this one is more of a space saver, and the flowers are just gorgeous. Beallaras and Miltonias and all of these hybrids are my favorites, to be honest. When it comes to the Oncidium Alliance, I think everything is my favorite, so maybe there's no point to say it, but yeah, I absolutely adore this orchid. And since we talked about Alicearas, here's one of them. This is the wonderful Aliceara Patricia McCully. And guess what? This is one of the sick Oncidium Alliance orchids that we saved in the springtime. I don't remember when I presented it in the first haul or the second haul. There were 2 hauls, but there she is. She is in bloom and she is wonderful. She's actually doing great. It was one of the orchids which weren't in all that bad shape, hence why it managed to bloom. And the smell of pepper is everywhere right now. It smells quite powerful, I have to say. Some people do love the smell of Beallaras, which always tends to be peppery. I'm not a huge fan, but I don't dislike it. I'm okay with it. The flowers, on the other hand, are absolutely incredible. Yes, I said it before, but I really do like Beallaras a lot. I like Miltonias. I like these hybrids that combine traits from the Miltonia with the Brassia, with some Odontoglossums maybe, and so on and so forth. Anyway, the Patricia McCully, absolutely hands down wonderful, beautiful. The colors are not very intense. They tend to be rather washed, but look at that pattern. And even with these pale colors, I just find it to be so elegant. Because of the shape of the flower, because of the pattern, it's elegant. I can overlook the fact that it's kind of lavender pink and it's kind of washed out. I love it. End of story. Patricia McCully, first time blooming after I saved it. And the orchid is actually doing great. You can see in the back the initial pseudobulb. This is the new pseudobulb. It's looking pretty great if I do say so myself. And this is the second Oncidium that we saved in that haul. There were a few which I bought without any type of flower. I didn't know what they were. This is one of them. I don't yet have an ID for it, but I've seen it around and I'm sure some of you already know the ID. For now, we're just gonna call it the NoID Oncidium. It's the only NoID Oncidium of this video, and we're gonna figure out the ID later. This guy, as you can tell, is not completely recuperated. It's still struggling, even though it does have a nice root system. It wasn't in as good shape as the Patricia McCully. So this flowering is not the best. You can see that the flowers are already fading. They really didn't last all that long. And after I finish filming it today, I'm just going to remove the flower spike. The pseudobulb is struggling despite my best efforts to maintain it hydrated. It's just a little bit too much for the orchid, considering it was sick. So I will remove it. No fragrance, but being that this is still a recovering and stressed orchid, maybe I shouldn't really say that it's not fragrant at all. We'll see how the next flowering goes. It is a beautiful orchid, but yeah, it definitely needs more time to recoup. And let me just show you, this is the older pseudobulb, the one it arrived with, and this is the newer pseudobulb. I purchased it with it being a new growth, and yeah, it looks okay, but definitely tinier than the previous pseudobulb. Doesn't look like it's supposed to look just yet. We have roots, so that's a good thing, but it's still too much for this orchid, so I will remove that flower spike. He's on the right track though, he just needs more time. Next up, here we have a Cattleya type orchid. This is the Cattleya Golden Peacock. Might not be a Cattleya anymore. I'll make sure to add in the description the new name. She is such a prolific bloomer. It blooms every time a new pseudobulb matures, and I have about 3 pseudobulbs per year on one direction, but I have multiple directions, 2, and now I can see another one forming. So pretty much as many new pseudobulbs you can get per year from this orchid, that's how many times it will bloom per year. And if you make sure you have multiple directions, then there you have it. It's gonna be a great show. My beef with it is that I cannot time all of them at the exact same time. I have 2 growths which look timed, but a third one will not be. It's okay though. This is not a fragrant orchid, but it is definitely a beautiful, beautiful orchid, grows very fast. I don't have enough words of praise for this orchid. If you like orange golden Cattleyas that don't have a fragrance but look like little stars, this is the orchid for you. Such a wonderful hybrid, blooms so many times per year, you're gonna get sick of it. Not. So yeah, we talked about it before. She's in bloom again, and because of those growths, she will be in bloom pretty soon. This is a new growth, this is a new growth, and there is a tiny one sprouting from the pseudobulb which is now in bloom. But you can imagine these 2 will be in bloom kind of at the same time, and the one in the back, no. I would much rather have a big flush of blooms once, but it's okay. Next up, I know you might not believe your eyes, but yes, these are 2 Zygopetallums. They're not new orchids, they have bloomed for me. But here's the catch. One of them is the one that I bought from Klassen Orchids, remember, in my Klassen haul, and the second one is one that I purchased locally thinking it was something different. But do you actually see any difference between the flowers? Can you tell there are 2 orchids here, separate of each other, which theoretically should not be the same variety? No, right? Well, I'm here to tell you that they look identical, they smell identical, they behave identical, and they bloom at the same time. They're identical orchids. Therefore, Klassen, I'm sorry, but I think you absolutely mislabeled your orchid. So, I shall call this Zygopetallum. What was that accent? Zygopetallum. That was a Romanian accent. It comes to me sometimes. So Zygopetallum NoID, not Rain Clown. I've seen Rain Clown pictures on the internet, and this ain't it. I've also searched the Chameleon Nursery, which this one is, on the internet, but they don't seem to have a commercial name for this particular hybrid. Maybe I missed it. I know the Louisendorf is pretty common here in my area, but I'm not entirely sure if this is it. Oh well, enough blabbing about, but it's a surprise, right? So what I intend to do with these zygos is pot them together. I am surely gonna keep both of them, and yes, up until now I didn't really have time to repot this one, and it was already starting to grow and I just postponed it. But look at this. This is what I'm telling you with these very flimsy white pots. These are not UV treated most probably, and this is what happens to them. So about this orchid, it has wonderful flowers. Obviously they're quite large. I really love the color combo. There's something about Zygopetallums that just works, even though we're talking about purple here. This one does have a fragrance, and indeed it does remind me a little bit of hyacinths, but it's not a one-to-one. It's not as, let's say, intense and as powerful. I know there are Zygopetallums which have much better fragrances than this particular one. The flowers are absolutely wonderful, and I'm very happy with myself that I finally got the care right. If you can believe it, they actually sit in the shadiest part of my growth space next to the African violets, but they don't have artificial light, so they just receive whatever bounces back from buildings around. It's not darkness, but it's not very bright, I have to say. And they loved it, and I think this is where I'm gonna keep them from now on because it worked great for me. The one that I have under LED panels doesn't do so great, so I will move that one as well. Next up, another Cattleya. This one surely has ants because it's an outside orchid. Don't worry about them. So this is Cattleya Ronnie Von. You guys might know it already. I'm not entirely sure if it is the Ronnie Von, to be fully honest. The pictures on the internet do not look like this one. They're pink, yeah, but they just look different. This one might be a Ronnie Von, but a different variety. Anyway, I blabbed too much. This orchid bloomed quite frequently for me, and even if the flowers are not, let's say, super spectacular or large, the fragrance is wonderful. To me, it smells like citrusy goodness. They have that really typical Cattleya citrus type of smell. I know that might sound strange, but that's what it is, and if you've ever had a Cattleya smelling citrusy, you know what I mean. But the fragrance is so incredibly intense. I have this orchid outside, and when I sit on the terrace, I can detect the fragrance being carried by the wind. It's that strong. So for the fragrance alone, I do absolutely love this orchid, and of course because somebody sent it to me, it is special and I treasure it. But yeah, I'm not sure if it's a Ronnie Von, sadly, which is sad because I absolutely love giving you guys IDs and descriptions of particular orchids, so you know if you should buy something or if you should stay away from it. I don't like presenting no IDs, but the world of orchids is full of no IDs, sadly, and I'm afraid this one, I will have to put it as a no ID pretty soon. I don't know, I'm still debating. Next up, my pride and joy, hands down, it really is that red, and looking at the viewfinder, I think in reality it's even redder. It seems to have waxy petals. Certainly the flowers are sturdy, and if you're thinking, when did you purchase this orchid? I don't remember you having this one. Yeah, when I purchased it, which was this year, it didn't look like this. It had a different shape to it. That was the first blooming of this orchid. This is the second blooming. And orchids, when they bloom for the first time, they don't show their full potential, or they don't look like they're supposed to look like. I'm thinking that what we saw then was not the full potential of the orchid. This is it. And it looks spectacular, I have to say. I don't know which one I like better, the other shape, which was beautiful and wild as well, or this shape, which absolutely looks like my logo. When I'm filming this, there are still a few buds left to open, but by the time that I upload the video, definitely there will be more buds open, so I'll do the B-rolls then. This orchid lacks a fragrance. That's the only thing that it lacks. And a proper ID, of course, because yes, it is a no ID. There have been many of you guys suggesting IDs, and I looked at all of them and I checked them with my orchid, and no, it's none of the IDs that you suggested, sadly. I don't have an ID for this wonderful, wonderful orchid. I wish I would. I'm currently going on the lead of a chocolate drop hybrid with something else, maybe the Harrisoniana. I think that's the closest one that I found, but it's not this one. There are so many varieties and variations of those varieties that it's hard to tell, and if the orchid doesn't have an ID, then yeah. But if you want something with this glossy reddish color, do check the Cattleya chocolate drop. Doesn't look like this really, but it has some features in common, so that's the closest that I came with this orchid. So I'm not sure how it translates on camera, but in reality it is a pure red, no purple, very, very intense and kind of dark. If you've ever seen cherries, that sounds stupid, I'm sorry. It has a cherry color, so that type of red. And the lip makes such a wonderful yellow contrast with everything. I am absolutely in love. If this orchid would have had a fragrance, I don't know about Princess Jackie being my favorite anymore, but it doesn't have a fragrance. So it cannot dethrone Princess Jackie. That one is the epitome of beautifulness, and just because of that fragrance and how beautiful the flowers look like. But this comes very close. So sadly, the NoID Red Cattleya blooms again, looks different than the first time, and I am in shock and awe of how beautiful it is. It's also a very sturdy plant. It created 2 directions of growth, so I'm hoping for more flowers. I got it this year and she did absolutely fantastic. I cannot complain. Roots are okay, orchid is okay. I'm growing it outside. Wonderful, wonderful orchid. I cannot believe it. I found it in the flower shop, so I think it's time to stop talking. Next up, another princess orchid. This is the wonderful Vendacious orchid, Rhynchostylis celestis blue. Now the reason it's wet is because I showered it a little bit. The flowers had quite a bit of ants. They don't do anything. They like to get that sugary sap, but I'm sure they would have given some of you the heebie-jeebies. So I prefer to just shower the orchid a little bit to make them hide so that I don't make you feel weird and itchy. So the Celestis blue, it is the 2nd year that it blooms for me around this time of the year. I think it will bloom once a year for me, but look at those inflorescences. I see that each orchid produces 2 flower spikes. I have a mother plant and a keiki in bloom. I have another keiki on this orchid, which is still a little too young to bloom, but what I'm noticing ever since this orchid is in bloom, it's getting dehydrated like crazy. So I have to step up my watering game when it's in bloom, because these flowers are taking up a lot of energy from the mother plant. But aren't they gorgeous? This is one of the orchids that I've always wanted to have. It is slightly fragrant, smells a little bit like spring flowers maybe. It's not sweet, it's not tremendously wonderful, it's not lemony or citrusy. It's kind of subtle, but it does have a fragrance. Very hard to pinpoint what it smells like. The flowers, I think, need no explanation. They are blue. In reality, they are a sort of purpley blue, but they're not as purple as you might think. Certainly, it is bluer than my Pachara, and this year, the flowers are a lot more intensely colored. I'll link you down below to my initial video on this orchid so you'll see the first inflorescence that I had from it. It was beautiful still, but not as intense. Now I see the little lips of these flowers are so intense, so beautiful. It's a wonderful orchid, and the fact that each fan blooms is great. But definitely I need to keep it more hydrated while it's in bloom, and afterwards I suspect it will return to normal. But yeah, all of these blooms do take up so much energy from the orchid. The next 2 orchids reside outside. First of all, the Phalaenopsis violacea. Yeah, we saw it last month as well, but this is a brand new flower because it is a sequential bloomer. So I don't want to disturb this orchid because it has a resident. Do you see that crab spider there? I've actually seen it hunt ants, so I just let him be there. He's kind of cute. He's a white spider, very rare. So the violacea, it is a wonderful sequential blooming Phalaenopsis orchid with flowers that smell like cinnamon. My variety has a bright magenta color, but there are different variations of the violacea. Even though it's a species, when it comes to fragrance, I didn't hear about much variation, but there we have it. I think by now we all know the violacea. And the other orchid is the Phalaenopsis Shin fly eagle, which again is a sequential bloomer. It's a Tetraspis hybrid, and just like its parent, all the flowers look a little bit different in between them, color-wise I mean. But this time, one of the flowers has an extra feature. Do you see the little nose there, which is not a nose, it's a column, but anyway, it looks like a nose. Do you see how wide it is on this particular flower? I find it very cute. So I think this is the last time we're gonna see the Shin. I don't think it will create another set of buds. It has bloomed quite a lot this summer and I'm very happy with it. It's a wonderful fragrant orchid, not as beautifully fragrant as the Beallara or the violacea, but it does have a sort of fruity fragrance to my nose. And that feature where the flowers are always just a little bit different between them is awesome. I think it's worth having. And that is about it for this month. As a little outro, the Cymbidium that we just repotted last week managed to actually open the buds from one of its flower spikes. So I get to enjoy the Cymbidium flowers just a little bit more. This orchid will not be included in the contest or what's in bloom or anything of the sort, but I just wanted to let you know that one of the flower spikes did manage to survive the repotting and I'm loving the Cymbidium. Alrighty guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to vote for your favorite orchid down below in the poll that I shared in the description. And with that said, you know the drill. Like or dislike this video below, subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, tutorials, Q&As, and other fun orchid subjects. And if you'd like to support the channel, do consider visiting the merch store down below. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!